What's happening, friends? Welcome back to CCB Podcasting Productions. This is a brand new show that I'm hosting along with my co-host for Behind the Curtain Territories, the one and only, I wish I could say and new, but I can't. I'll let him fill us in on that. It's Eric the Lariat Steele, brother. Welcome back. It's good to have you on a new program.
What's up, man? It's good to be here. Unfortunately, I did not win the AIWF World Title. It was a 30-minute draw.
Oh, that means that we're running
Yeah,
it
I hit him
back
with
on
the
the Indies.
lariat. I had him pinned. One, two, then the bell rings. I thought that I won, but the time expired.
Oh, it's crushing. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking. But there's got to be a rematch down the line, right?
We have a rematch October 14th. I put my title on the line too, and it's going to be no time limit, no disqualification, no countouts.
There we go. I'm here for it. We have got I said new program top of the show. This is Behind the Curtains Rivalries. So we're pivoting over. You and I will be talking territories one week, and then we'll be talking interesting rivalries or stuff that has struck out at us over the course of the years of watching professional wrestling. Because truly, this is one of the few things that can bring so many people together, as the channel that we have got going dictates. So if you're new to the channel and this is one of your first programs, welcome. We're glad you're here. And without further ado, man, when you talk professional wrestling and you talk rivalries, there are so many good ones that just stick out. But you and I kind of landed on one that I feel like, as we were talking off air, I truly feel like this is one of the rivalries that really pivoted the Monday Night Wars. And it's, going back to 1996. You and I, we're going to talk about Stone Cold Steve Austin and Bret the Hitman Hart.
I'm super excited, man. Bret Hart is my all-time favorite in-ring worker. It's the best there was, and probably the best there's ever going to be because nobody else has made me change my opinion. So,
Well, sure. I mean, Bret is. You go back to 92, 93. Wrestling was on a downward slope from the 80s, or downward trajectory. But Bret was always one of those workers that you knew that when you were seeing him on top that you were going to get 15 to 30 minutes. And you knew that it
oh
was
yeah,
going to be really good technical wrestling, and that's kind of where my bread and butter is with professional wrestling. Is I'm a huge mark for the technical side of it. Um, so when I would grow up with Brett, I remember one of my first memories was when he beat Flair in Saskatoon for the WWF Championship, and I was like, oh shit, we're seeing a huge pivot because growing up in the '80s, Hogan and Flair were the two.
yeah,
So just and Hogan was kind of a bigger guy. Flair not as big as Hogan, but Brett was smaller than all of them. And for the first time, I'm seeing a smaller guy work on top, and not only work on top, but having great technical matches with just about anybody put in the ring with him.
yeah. That was the thing about Bret Hart. You could put anybody in the ring with him, and he's going to have a good match with them. Like Kevin Nash. Let's just say Kevin Nash, for example. Now, people have their different opinions on Kevin Nash. The dude was a star. Like he was a great professional wrestler. As far as like doing the moves inside the ring, he was limited. But man, his matches with Bret Hart, I think, are his best matches. I mean, close behind his Shawn Michaels, but I think his match with Bret Hart are just his best matches. And Bret could get a good match out of anybody. His match with Yoko, I mean, Bam Bam could go, but his match with Bam Bam, he can work with anybody, man. He was so good.
I
My
mean,
dream match, if I could book a match from any time, I would put 1992 Bret Hart with 1992 Brad Armstrong, and that would be a
let let,
amazing 20-minute match.
let them go. Just let them
Yeah.
go. The cool thing about the Bret Hart Steve Austin story to me is And it doesn't just start in 96. You go back to, 92, 93, 94, and 95. Bret's kind of the guy, right? Like he's
Yeah.
kind of on top, and he is a babyface to the core. 95, 96, the world starts changing a little bit. And you can see it with WCW and the birth of the NWO. And you can see the stories, kind of taking a more realistic approach versus, more theatrical, if you will, in regards to what you're seeing on television. And you also start getting, the rise of Stone Cold Steve Austin. And that starts at King of the Ring, 96. That was supposed to go to Hunter, and it goes to Steve. And Austin is kind of off to the races there.
Yeah. I mean, like '96, you started seeing a lot more edginess. A lot more realism, I guess, put into everything. Um, and Stone Cold, that Austin 316 promo, going to be one of the most famous promos of all time.
The fourth prestigious King of the Ring, Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Talk about your Psalms, talk about John 3:16. Austin 3:16 says, I just whipped your ass.
And then after, he becomes King of the Ring, he starts calling out Bret Hart. Well, Bret Hart's going. I think Bret Hart, he had lost the belt to Shawn, and he had been off since WrestleMania, taking some time off. I don't remember if he was filming a show or a movie too, or just taking time off.
I believe this might have been, and I think it was the Lonesome Dove stuff.
Yeah.
If it's not the Lonesome Dove stuff, it was some he was filming something. He took time off, and that was part of what he was doing.
Yeah, and then I remember those promos, man, when Stone Cold cutting promos on Bret Hart. I still remember this today. He was like, "You take the Hitman, you put an S in front of it, and that's exactly what I think of Bret Hart." And I just remember popping for that as a kid, and still this day, just that's a good promo, man. That's a good line.
I'm so glad that you went there, because that is the promo, probably the promo that sticks out amongst the early rivalry with Bret, was that particular deal. And what's cool about that is this is 1996. We're in 2023. And one line of a promo resonates and still is something that you can look back on and say, I remember where I was when this happened. And it's so minor, but it was so major at the same time. Put the letter S in front of Hitman, and that's my exact opinion of Bret Hart. I believe he said that to Pillman, with Pillman in the ring.
I think so. I think he said it more than once. I think he said it in the Pillman promo, and I remember this is like they're switching up to Raw is War, and I remember him cutting those promos and like the chain link fence, and that's part of that they would use for the introductory to Raw is War. They had the sirens and into the empty factory and stuff like that.
No doubt. When we first start getting going, so I can remember again back in this time, the NWO was just starting to heat up. So the war was real on television, and the one thing that kept me going back to the WWF at that point in time was to see if this thing with Steve Austin was going to play out. Again, at this point in time, as a kid, I am probably 14 or 15 years old. 96, I was a freshman in high school.
Yeah.
So I wasn't completely smart. I was smart enough, but I wasn't smart to the business. I didn't connect the dots that Steve Austin at that point in time, like when he first came in as the ringmaster. A gimmick that was not going to get over. I did not connect the dot that was stunning Steve Austin, that I had just seen a year and a half ago in WCW working with Steamboat. Didn't
Yeah, I didn't either.
It didn't.
I was
Go ahead.
Very good.
I was saying the only way that dot was connected was with the mic work with Brian Pillman, and they talked about it. They brought it up. They brought up the tagging together. That's not Steve Austin. I went back and looked. That's fucking stunning Steve Austin. but while WCW Austin had got a decent run, but he never got that top run, right? And when you fast forward and you see the attitude change and Stone Cold is born, to me, why I would flip back is because I'm thinking, is this the moment that we're waiting for, that I've been waiting for? Because I thought Steve Austin, when I connected that dot and knew who he was, I was like, this guy was so goddamn good in WCW, it was a crying shame. Now you're probably putting him with Bret Hart. Oh, I need to see what's going to happen here.
Yeah, like in WCW, Austin was he was going to be stuck in that role as a mechanic. His biggest singles run, he was U.S. champion. He was part of the Dangerous Alliance. And, he had a really good feud with Steamboat, some real good matches with Steamboat, but was stuck in that upper mid tier area. And he talks about he did an interview talking about how Anderson said, "So what's so stunning about Steve Austin? Like, what is your gimmick besides your name in a robe, some balding blonde hair?" And he talked about how that really made him look inward and think like, man, I got to get deeper than this. Like, about how that really helped him develop his character and where he's going to go. And he knew that Ringmaster was going nowhere. And he's talked about in interviews before. He told Vince, he said, "Look, these guys are bigger than me. They're taller than me. He's like, I can't compete with them being the ringmaster. My body's tearing up. I can't just be a mechanic, a technical wrestler." He said, "Me be me, talk how I want to talk, and we can do something here." So, he was pushing for that Stone Cold character himself. He knew what he had to do to be a star,
Yeah, he got a laundry list of names, of monikers to go by. As the story goes, his wife made him some tea. Don't drink that before it gets stone cold. And there's Steve Austin. He's like, that fits. And
yeah,
it did. It truly did, especially when they got off, out the gate on this. As we're getting into, Survivor Series season in '96, Bret's coming back. Austin has made the play, and he's the heel here. He's got some fans cheering for him, but most of them are still booing him at this point. And Bret gets the Bret pop that he usually gets, and comes back and agrees to take on Austin at Survivor Series. And the moment that promo aired on Monday Night Raw, I was hooked. I went, I will be watching, I will be ordering this event for no other reason because I have to see what happens here.
Yeah. And, at this time, like, I was 11. Like, I just turned 11 in August of '96. And I was, I'm a Hogan guy, man. Like, Hogan is still my all-time favorite professional wrestler. I will argue that Hogan is the best professional wrestler of all time with anybody all day long. And I was hooked. I was all in on the Hogan heel turn. Like, I was smart enough to know that wrestling's a work. I could also still buy into stuff. And I just thought Hollywood Hogan was so cool, man. I remember me and my friends in middle school trying to act just like the NWO. Which got us in a lot of trouble. But I remember, like, this Austin Bret Hart thing. I was like, man, like, I want to watch this. Like, I want to watch this. Like, I'm not too concerned with NWO. I want to see what's going on here.
It was one of those things, like, it had the big fight feel to it, and it led to what I feel is one of they had great matches, obviously throughout this entire fucking rivalry, but what better way to kick it off than with the match that they had at fucking Survivor Series?
Almost 30 minutes long.
Bret's return to the ring. He was treated like a hero. Austin was, to me, the Survivor Series match, if you didn't take Austin seriously at that point, you fucking did, or you don't need to be watching television. You don't need to be watching professional wrestling.
That match did a great job of, like, Bret Hart came back with almost 8 months off, didn't miss a beat, like almost no rust at all. And it made you, like you said, take Stone Cold seriously. Like, he lost, but it's super close. You think, man, like, he almost beat Bret Hart. He could probably beat about anybody. Like, this guy's going places.
The storytelling was, it wasn't necessarily the loss. It was how you lost.
Yeah.
These guys, they tore it down for almost 30 minutes. And, it was to the point where what else can I do? And Stone Cold broke out the $1 Million Dream, and Hart did that corner counter, rolled him up, stacked the shoulders down, 1, 2, 3. Austin immediately sits up and just has that look of, no, son of a bitch. That son of a
that
bitch.
close.
And it was, to me, it was perfect storytelling. Now, I'm not going to lie. I do wish that Austin would have went over in that one. But I understood why Bret did, and I understood the logical scenario around it. Because at that point, I think I'm 15, 16 years old, so I knew that we're not done. Like, this is really just the start of something that is going to blossom into something so much bigger and so much better. But it was enough for me to, again, just hook in and tune in to Monday nights. I mean, I was clearly channel changing just like everybody else was.
Yeah.
But when fucking Bret Hart or Austin was on, or I knew they were coming, buddy, I was there. I didn't care what was going on the other channel. It didn't. That was irrelevant to me at the time because I felt like Austin Hart was the best story on television at that time.
Oh yeah, hands down, man, hands down.
There's a lot of moving parts. You get to the Royal Rumble.
Oh man, what a great story they told in the Rumble! Like, what a great finish.
I mean, it doesn't. It really, like, you look back on the storytelling of it all. You get down to the Final Four. First of all, Shawn Michaels recaptures the championship. They're gearing towards Bret and Shawn too. Apparently, not knowing, a handful of weeks later, Shawn loses a smile. But we get into this Final Four situation, and Austin gets dumped. So Taker or somebody else, I think it was Taker and Vader. One of them gets dumped, and he slips in the ring, and fucking it's a classic heel finish to a Rumble, but to have it done to Bret, and to have go ahead.
And they're playing so many feuds together, like in this finish, because it's not just Bret and Austin. So Bret eliminates Austin, right? But you have Mankind and Terry Funk brawling on the outside, which is a feud that has been going there too, and a feud that should have got more time in WWF. So the referees are distracted with them brawling. That allows Austin to come back in because they didn't see it. And then the other three guys in there are Diesel, Vader, and Undertaker. You got Undertaker and Diesel getting a feud, getting ready to be started too, and which all plays into this. It's just such great storytelling because you got 3 feuds involved in one little angle right there, one little finish.
I mean, it was great, and again, you can't really plan for situations with Shawn Michaels and having to vacate the championship with your biggest show right around the corner. But how they parlayed that into the Fatal 4-Way match that was at the pay-per-view Fatal 4-Way was Vader, Undertaker, Bret, and Steve Austin. And this is a match that I truly feel is like an underrated match. I think it's a little hidden gem if you go back and take a peek at it. Because not only did all 4 guys, and I was very skeptical going into this. I was like, I don't know what's going to happen here, and I'm not a big fan of it. But watching the match and watching the work that all 4 of those cats put in, especially Vader. Vader used that opportunity to make, can't talk about Vader and talk about this time if you don't go back to SummerSlam the year prior, where he and Shawn Michaels were hooked up, and Shawn, killed his push, essentially. I don't know how else to put it. It was supposed to be Vader in that situation going into the Rumble, and he was supposed to win it back from Vader there, but it ended up being Sid, et cetera, et cetera. Shawn said no. But Vader really, I feel like he used that spotlight in that match in February to silence some critics. And it's not necessarily The fact that he took as much punishment as he did, it's just a matter of, I think he knew that he had something to prove as a competitor.
Yeah, and Vader was so amazing, man. Such a great talent. Like, I put for people that I want to watch, Vader's in my top 5. Like, I just loved old school Vader. He wasn't the same since he came to WWF, and I thought he was going to be great in WWF. And he came to WWF and just wasn't the same. And that Final Four match is like when you really saw that was his peak, like he in WWF in ring. I think you saw glimpses of like the old Vader in that match, and if he had stayed like that the whole time, I think his road would have been a lot different too.
You get coming off of that, actually Bret wins, picks up the championship. Now this is where everything gets a little convoluted because of the storytelling that had to be told. The next night on Raw, Sid Vicious gets a rematch against Bret. Austin screws Bret out of the title. Sid picks up the championship. You roll into WrestleMania season with Sid Taker, and I believe Austin and Hart was underneath that. But Austin fucks his knee up here. This is the infamous night where he thought he was not going to be ready for WrestleMania. And had no intentions of being on the card, and is at home in Texas and gets watching Raw, and the announcement's made that Bret Hart's going to be taking on Steve Austin, and they loop in Ken Shamrock as the special guest referee. How fucking cool was that?
Man, so I remember, like I said, I was flipping back and forth just like everybody back then, and I missed like the whole Final Four pay-per-view, and that the stipulation was whoever won the belt. And I remember turning on Monday Night Raw. I think Monday Night Raw maybe started before or something. And I remember that Raw started out with Bret Hart coming out as champion. I was like, whoa.
Yep.
Bret Hart is champion again. I'm watching this. And then, around this time is when you have Bret Hart snapping after the match, after the cage match. They turn the cage down, and that's when he goes off on Vince McMahon. And that's when they reveal that Vince McMahon is actually the owner of WWF on television. Like, I didn't know that back in the day. I just knew Jack Tunney was a president.
Sure. Same.
And that's when they reveal that, and that's when you start seeing that little bit of turn, a little bit of edge that Bret Hart's get, the frustration kind of boiling over up to the surface. And I thought, man, like, I miss Monday Night Raw again. Like, I got to watch this instead of no flipping back and forth. Like, let's stay on this. Like, I don't want to miss anything here.
I think that match with Sid the show was supposed to start with it. Austin attacked either Bret or Sid backstage. Then they were supposed to do it at the top of the hour, and Austin attacked somebody else. And then the main event at the very end of the show was when they did the match. And, I mean, I'm not a big fan of the creative with putting it on Bret and then taking it right off of him on the next night. I'm not. I guess I would have to have been in that position as the booker to see what the scenarios were, because I easily think that Bret and Steve at this point could have headlined for the World Championship. I think that could have been a thing, and it could have been a bigger thing than Taker and Sid, and that's no disrespect to Taker or Sid.
Yeah, and I get what you're saying. My argument to that would be that Bret Hart and Stone Cold was big enough that it didn't need the title, whereas Taker and Sid needed something to make that match bigger. Like, those guys are huge stars, but they need something for that match to be big, for the stakes to be higher for that match. So while you take just a little bit away from Austin and Hart, you're adding a whole lot to Sid and Taker. You know what I mean?
Sure. I can see that argument being made. Yeah. I still think that my side of that coin, man. Come on, Austin and
I get what you're saying
for the strap. Come on.
Yeah.
And that same match plays out. Come on. It would have been fucking bittersweet. I really, really fucking enjoyed the use of Ken Shamrock. So, and I say that because at the time, like, I wasn't a big UFC guy. I'm still, at this point, 16, 17 years old. So I'm not seeing. I don't see a whole lot of it. I'm not paying attention to a lot of it. So it introduced me to Ken Shamrock, and while he wasn't at the very green as far as promotional and promo style, etc., but the added element of him as the special referee for this match that we were going to get at WrestleMania between Austin and fucking Hart, it gave it more to me, gave it more credibility than the first one.
Yeah, this was a submission match too.
Yes, and from Austin's side of the equation, I'm not a submission wrestler. Well, I thought when the match was announced as a submission match that this was gonna, I was not a fan of the match announcement initially, and then the match happened, and it gave me a whole new perspective on how to psychologically how to take a crowd on a ride in a submission style match with a guy who's really a brawler.
Yeah, that's one of my all-time favorite matches, man. Maybe like it's like it battles for the number one spot in my all-time favorite matches. Like the storytelling match, how it builds everybody and develops everybody. It's just so good, man. The double turn, like there's never been a better double turn in wrestling. It's just amazing.
I would be hard pressed to say that if anybody is talking greatest matches of all time, I'd be hard pressed to say that this is not in everybody's top 5. Or a good chunk of professional wrestling fans, because and two, it depends on your taste and it depends on what you're looking for out of the product. At the time, to me, this was, again, it was the hottest program, and now Austin started calling him out, and after King of the Ring, and you got to Survivor Series, and then the Rumble, and then the Fatal 4-Way, and now here we are at WrestleMania. It's 9-10 months deep, and to see how everything unfolded. Now this is the one I thought that Austin was going to get the dupe on and get the win on, and even it out. So I was not a fan of Bret going over at that time. But the match that we saw, like it was really incredible from beginning, middle to end. Again, the roller coaster ride of the psychology that they took us on was second to none. And the double turn, I mean, I've seen double turns done since, and you're absolutely correct. This one was done famously. Ken Shamrock played his role well. Bret played his role phenomenally. The very end where Austin is getting up and he stuns a referee, great.
Yeah.
And limps out on his own accord. I mean, it was all picture perfect storytelling from start to finish. It doesn't get better than that.
Yeah, and I'll say I think Austin losing that way, like he's bleeding, like gushing blood. He's in the sharpshooter. He won't lose. He won't tap out. He won't submit. They didn't really have tap outs back then. He won't submit. And then he just passes out. Like, you didn't see that happen very much back then either. I think losing that way did more for the Stone Cold character than if he had won.
Absolutely. Hence why I said back then, because now when you really sit back and you put it in perspective, the visual of him pushing up out of the sharpshooter is one that's etched in memory. If for any fan who was around back in the day, fuck man, they sold T-shirts of it. Like there was a lot that one specific match and the performances by both Bret and Stone Cold Steve Austin. It shows you why they are looked at even to this day. Years and years later, 20 some odd years later, almost 20 some odd years later, a little over 20 years. Who fucking knows? It's talked about as arguably one of the greatest feuds of all time for a good fucking reason. The work is there.
Oh man,
and it so made both of them. Like Bret was already a made guy. Don't get me wrong, but the heel turn fucking enhanced it. Now, because as a kid in the '80s, like I remember Bret being a bad guy with the Hart Foundation. I don't ever remember Bret being a solo heel, as a singles. So now I'm seeing something different, and I'm seeing something very unique, and at least for me at that point in time, and the birth of the Hart Foundation being revived. I mean, it's just that double turn led to so fucking much.
Oh yeah, I mean it was huge for both of them, man. The heel turn for Brett is what his character needed. It's what his career needed, and it just really elevated, Stone Cold. He just, really made him in the eyes of the fans that finish. Not giving up that tough SOB, image.
Mm-hmm. I think, I mean, the feud continued. I remember, I don't remember the exact In Your House, but there was an In Your House that Austin and Brett were on top. It wasn't for a championship, and it was what I can remember. One of the only victories Austin got over Brett, and I think it was by disqualification or something like that. But it was good shit. The match that well, let me backtrack because the match that he had with Brett, the month after was I think it was a Cold Day in Hell, and Austin's in the ring with the Undertaker for the WWF Championship.
Let's see if I can find it here.
That's something. I mean, now the company is starting to put some bigger stock in you.
Yeah.
Now, granted, he did the job to take her, but the Hart Foundation was involved. Brian Pillman rang the bell after Austin hit a stunner. Like there was some gaga, as Pat Patterson would say, involved in it. But Taker ended up going over. But Austin got his hands on Brett when it was all said and done, and that place was going fucking insane.
He was so over after that, WrestleMania 13 match, man. That's what really got Austin white hot. He would keep doing some stuff with Brett, but they wouldn't get back to where they're at. But man, anytime they interact with each other, that heat was still there.
Yeah, and while I think the rivalry could have obviously continued and did, over the course of the next year or so. Brett's out the door, Survivor Series, I believe, the following year. We did get what I think is something that we definitely need to talk about, even though it wasn't a pivotal spot in the rivalry itself. But we got to talk about Canadian Stampede, that fucking 10-man tag.
Oh yeah,
like
that match was huge. I remember getting that pay-per-view for I can't remember when it was. I remember getting this in the summertime. I remember getting that, and I'm watching it thinking, there's got to be more than 4 matches on this pay-per-view, right? But then, man, all 4 of those matches are good, and that 10-man tag at the end is just like probably the best 10-man tag I've ever seen, honestly. 10-man, 8-man, you're going to get much better than that, unless you want to throw some War Games in there or something. But as like a multi-man tag match goes, it was great. Even the ending, the finish was great.
I was about to say, even the psychology with that was nuts. While it could be said that maybe Goldust didn't belong there at that point in time. It was Goldust, it was Ken Shamrock, the Legion of Doom, and Austin versus the Hart Foundation. Brett, Owen, the Bulldog, Neidhart, Pillman.
Well, Goldust and Pillman were feuding at the time.
Is that what it was? Oh, that's right, because they were feuding over Marlena that would come in after. Right after. Okay, that makes sense then. I should go back in time and watched and saw it for myself. But okay, so now that makes sense. But the heels are out first. Obviously, you're in Canada. And what I love about this from beginning, middle to end, from the entrances all the way down, Pillman's out first for the Hart Foundation, and he rallies the crowd for Neidhart, who gets a pretty good pop. Davey Boy gets a louder pop. Owen gets a bigger pop. And here comes Brett. And it's like, to put it to terms now, it's like, Bret Hart in Canada is like David or Kerry Von Erich in Texas.
Yeah, maybe bigger, honestly.
Bigger for sure. I guess on a bigger scale. It was nuts. The crowd was insane. Fucking the smoke clears and the dust settles, and you got Bret and Austin in the center, and they just start throwing hands, dude.
Yeah, and they let Owen, like the part where Owen gets hurt and he has to leave the match. Then Austin gets hurt and has to leave. Owen comes back, and then Austin comes back. Like it's just so good storytelling. A match is probably 20 minutes long, 20, 30 minutes long too.
Easy. I think it's like 20, 25, and Owen scoring the win with the cradle on Austin.
Yeah,
I mean, even Austin taking the L in Canada, like that's what they wanted to see. The fans wanted to see it, and they gave it to him. To the celebration after the fact. I think this is one of the last times we get to see Stu on TV, and get into the ring. It was a great fucking show, and it showcased everybody involved in it. And it was just a nice little cap, because I think Bret's not too long for the world after that.
Yeah, it's not too much longer after that, because I think after that is SummerSlam, when they set up Shawn and Taker, and they start building towards Survivor Series. That's when Bret wins the belt from Undertaker. The next show at SummerSlam. Then they go into the Shawn Taker Hell in a Cell. I don't remember what Bret does then.
Patriot, and because this is where Austin is taking the tombstone and he's out. Same SummerSlam.
Yeah.
So he's on the shelf. So they bring in the Patriot. He works the Patriot there, and then they get to Bret and Shawn, and then we all know what happens at that point.
Yeah.
So I think, as we're talking about this, the only real piece of business that the Austin Hart rivalry was missing was the like a finish, like a tie and a bow on it, because they didn't necessarily get the opportunity to.
Yeah, and I mean, just imagine if they had got the headline like Mania 14. A lot of people were wanting that Shawn Bret rematch, but if Austin had been the guy to take the belt off at WrestleMania 14 instead of having to do Austin and Michaels, at WrestleMania 14, how that would have been different,
For sure. And part of me thinks that might have been the direction they were going, but I don't know. I mean, at that point in time too, there was a lot of politics being played behind the curtain, and a lot of just stories are out there, and I'm sure over the course of this series we'll be talking about some of them. Or trying to get to the bottom of some of it. I am a huge proponent, and I stand by it. I said it at the top of the program. I truly think that this is one of those rivalries for the WWF at that point in time that started to turn the ship around for the Monday Night Wars. It wasn't instantaneous by any means. We get the Mr. McMahon character on television here just a handful of months later, after Bret leaves the company, and boom, we're off to the races.
The way that I would describe this era is this was them stretching before their big run.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is them warming up, getting their little jogging lap in, and I love this era, honestly. Like, it was so good. The WWF era was so good then, man. And I mean, honestly, like WCW was still beating them, so not as many people were watching this as were watching the NWO at the time.
Sure, and for those that missed it, you missed some hidden gems that you need to go take a look at. That's exactly what I can tell you, because I thought that outside of the rivalry, just missing that finish on it, it was tremendous, because when you look at a rivalry between talents, like, at least when I was in the business, and you can tell me you still are on the circuit, if you got a guy that you can really work well with, like, you want to go tell the best stories that you can tell, because if they keep coming back, well, we're still making money. We're gonna make more money.
I mean,
I feel
you just got to keep building that up, man.
I feel like that Austin and Bret together is like peanut butter and jelly.
Oh yeah,
It
I'd say better
just
than peanut butter jelly. I'd say peanut butter and chocolate.
there you go, peanut butter and chocolate. It was awesome stuff, and it catapulted Austin in the final picture in the end game. Austin did get catapulted up. He did win the World Heavyweight Championship, and did go
Yeah.
on to draw big money and become probably one of the highest drawing professional wrestlers of all time. From
He had the
merchandise to
hottest
tickets.
short run. He didn't have a long run. Like he didn't get to have a long run just because of injuries and other things. But nobody was hotter than Stone Cold at that point in time when he was at his hottest, man.
He was definitely doing his thing. Man, I think that we covered this rivalry, brother. Is there anything else you wanna touch on when it comes to Austin and Bret Hart?
No, man, I think we touched on everything. I mean, we got the same sentiment, man. It was really what brought people back to really help bring people back to WWF, like some lapsed WWF fans. It's great storytelling, man. Great feud, great rivalry.
One to kick off this program with. I mean, we were doing so much stuff here over on the podcasting channel with Behind the Curtain. I'm really enjoying the fellowship with all the co-hosts and sitting down and talking with everybody about professional wrestling, brother. And this is no exception. I think since we shoot this show every other week, I think I'm gonna throw a Twitter poll out and get with you off air to get some rivalries and throw a poll out there and see what the listeners want us to talk about next.
Sounds great, man. Because got to give the people what they want.
That's right. You got to give the people what they want, as old Excalibur would say. You got anything you want to say to the people, the viewers, before we close it out?
To listen to us talk about some old pro wrestling, man. Appreciate it.
Yep. And if you haven't, go ahead and give us a like, give us a subscribe for all things Behind the Curtain. We've got the Territory Show. We've got this program, the Rivalry Show. We do watch-alongs. We do women's watch-alongs. Like, you name it. There's not a whole lot we're not doing. We're live streaming on Mondays and Thursdays. That link is down below. All kinds of different odds and ends. We're glad that you're here. And if you like what you heard, come back next week because we've got some more good stuff coming to you. This is Chris Page for Eric Steele. We'll see you next week.